Well, before we touch on, let's call it your incident. I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah, it's definitely not an accident.
Was there something prior to that stood out? Was there a mission? Was there a task that happened that you thought this is good?
Yeah. So I won't go into like op names or anything like that, but I can remember us getting into a position where we had to screen off to the east, while the armoured infantry went into I wouldn't say a village. It was more like a town, and it was quite interesting to just witness this. So you've got 105 artillery getting called in. You've got attack helicopters circling around and engaging enemy. I'm watching armoured infantry going through, clearing, and then you can see the enemy withdrawing through the compounds, and our snipers are engaging them, and our javelin teams, and we're engaging them with our main armaments, or calling in strikes on them. And I can remember sitting back and thinking to myself, this is pretty cool. I'm actually seeing all the pieces. Yeah, it's like quite a small little piece of land that I'm looking at now, but I can see all the chess pieces in place, to be able to sit back and witness this operation unfolding, and all of the might of the armed forces being brought to bear. It was pretty cool, because cool. I'd never seen anything at that scale during my time.
Yeah. And is that because you were doing the recce kind of stuff, looking down on things?
We'd snuggled in our vehicles, like in the dead of night, and harboured up just outside this little village, and then we moved up onto this ridge line just before dawn. Our guys cleared all the areas, because this ridge line, obviously there's a good chance there's going to be mines there, and then we just deployed everyone out. But it was an amazing thing. Mastiff was just a bit of kit, so well armoured, and you could carry so much weaponry, so every person's got their own weapon system. Your commander, I had a sidearm as well, but then you've got a GPMG in the back as well. You've got a LASM, which is like a rocket launcher, 51mm mortar, because we were just transferring into 60mm mortars then. So you've got a mortar in the back. Plus, I had a sniper, so he had his rifle as well. And then you've got like near enough like a pallet of ammunition for all these different weapon systems. So, and then you've got the 50 cal on the top as well. So I had a 50 cal, which, was incredible. It could, the range on it is amazing, really, really accurate, really, really reliable. So you always felt like you could sit in any sort of situation and soak up anything the enemy would chuck at you, and really, make a bit of a fist of it. So it was just an amazing platform to work off.
And you mentioned Mastiff, right? So if you were describing it to a civilian, what size vehicle would you kind of compare it to?
The only way you could describe it is it being a big truck.
A big truck.
A big truck with bar armour all around it. So imagine a truck and a shopping trolley had a baby, and then they stick a big gun on the top of it. It is like the shopping trolley of doom. Like, they're amazing vehicles.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing. I owe my life to Mastiff. Definitely.
I remember they had quite small windows, didn't they, for the size of them?
Yeah.
And then you had cameras around them as well.
Yeah,
we mentioned this in one of the earlier episodes with Callum, but it's good to get someone else's perspective. But
I mean, like some guys like to command from the commander's seat at the front where the driver was. But like the majority of commanders had to command from up top, like as a gunner.
Right.
Because you just, like you say, that you got such a small field of view, it's very difficult to get any understanding of the battlefield or the ground around you. If you're out on patrol, as a commander, you're looking for VPs. Now, there's a different type of VP. There's vulnerable points, so it could be a wadi crossing where you have to cross in that point, and you would have to go like 10 Ks north or 10 Ks south to get around that. So the enemy knows that. Yeah. They know where the VPs are, so that's where they plant the explosives. So you as a commander, if you're up top, you're in an elevated position. You can react quickly because you've got a weapon system right there. You've got your map out, in front of you. Not like an officer where it's over your face, but sort of folded down. So you've got all your kit there, but you're able to see the ground quite clearly. You can't do that from up front.
Yeah.
You know, I said, when I look back on it, I think to myself, if I'd have been a bit more of a front seat commander, I probably wouldn't be in the situation I'm in now. But, you know, it is what it is.
Okay. So would you like to explain and describe your incident?
Yeah. So one of the things about Afghanistan as well during that period, and, you know, I wouldn't say it was particular just to, you know, like Musakala, was the fact that if you're a lead call sign, which tended to be your troop corporal or whoever that might be, depending on what unit, there's a good chance you're going to get hit by an IED. You know, we within our sort of squadron, we just learned to accept, look, that's the way it is. And again, like I said earlier on, some people don't like going operational tours because they just can't cope with the risk. You know, it's a job that you have to do. You can't do your job without a level of risk. You know, so it's not being a hero. It's just doing your job. You know, you get up in the morning, you get out, and there is a chance that you're going to get hit. But you're in a Mastiff, in our case, which is quite armoured. You know, we'd had a number of strikes, quite a number of the troop corporals had hit devices, lost a wheel station, you know, maybe bit a lip or got a couple of bruises, you know, and everyone generally comes out all right. You know, a good friend of mine had been injured down south like the month before I'd been in my incident, almost to the day. And, you know, like he was to date our worst casualty on Mastiff up until then, you know, and again, like he, you know, suffered an injury to his leg and subsequently ended up having his leg amputated. So he's a through knee amputee. You know, I can remember that hitting everyone like a shovel into the face because, you know, again, we're a very small knit unit, you know, but everyone understood, look, that's the threat. You know, these things happen. The vehicle soaks up the brunt of everything. You'd have a lot more confidence on Mastiff than what you could have, say, if you were on CVRT or if you were working on Jackal, like a squadron was. You know, so like we had a lot of confidence in the vehicle, but we knew there's a good chance we'd get hit. So when one of my friends had hit an ID, no casualties or anything, and you know, like I was going out on patrol like the following day. I was going from Musakala DC, where we were based out of, to Fob Edinburgh. And, you know, it's not too much of a long distance. So there were a number of things that I needed to do on that role, you know, that on that route as a commander. So, you know, like dropping things off at certain fobs on the way, or, you know, like transporting equipment. One of them was like taking my buddy's Mastiff, which was being like towed along by our REME guys up to Fob Edinburgh. So I looked at the route the night before. I've done it a million times. Knew exactly where all the vulnerable points were on that route, and plotted them all out as I always did, and you know, made sure everything was sorted, briefed my team up and everything. And we as a troop, we went out the following day, and I was lead call sign. Off we went across the Musakala Wadi, and on our merry way, and started working our way through all of our VPs. We got so far through, we're probably within, I would say, about 20 minutes of reaching Fob Edinburgh. And there's like this big, massive wadi with this little village. And you come up out of the wadi and you come up onto quite a big plateau. And a vehicle, a warrior had been hit on this area beforehand. And because it'd been hit, there's quite a lot of like metal shavings and stuff like that in the ground. So it takes a bit of time to work way through that because, you know, whenever you come up to a VP, you've got to stop short. Your team, your bomber team as it was back then, drills have changed. You know, bomber team would deploy with their metal detectors and they would work their way forward. And you as the guy on top, be that the commander or gunner, you would provide them cover while they clear the VP. So they would clear plus of the VP, make sure that whole area is clear, and then everyone mounts back up and you move on and you do the same thing when you get to the next VP. So I got two guys in the back of my Mastiff, and you know their job, their primary role was to be the bomber team, and you know it's really exhausting. You know, like I said earlier on about, you know, you're laying there in the midday sun, you know, on your belt buckle with a paintbrush, trying to brush away to identify if you've got an ID in front of you, not knowing if it's going to go off or anything like that. So, you know, it takes a real toll on these soldiers, and you know I had a good understanding of that, and I can remember We come up out of the wadi. We moved onto the plateau, and I'm looking at the ground now, and there's another wadi off to our west, and it's the very top. So like the very top V of that wadi. So just where the ground starts to drop off. So you don't want to go too far to the west, because that takes you really close to dead ground. So, you know, as a commander, you like to put your mind in, you know, the enemy's sort of position and think, well, if I was planting an ID in this area, how would I access this area? Now, it's overlooked by FOB Edinburgh, so the sangers can see where I am. I can see them, so they must be able to see me. Dead ground over by here. So I don't really want to go over that way, because how easy is it for somebody to crawl up through this wadi, get up onto that plateau, dig it in, because it's only sand, dig it in, plant a device, and then snuggle back down in the dead ground. Never seen. I don't want to go too far to the east because, like I said, I just come out of this big, massive wadi and it's huge. And if we hit a device and we were right over to effectively my right, or the east as it was, you know, there's a chance that we could, if it was a big bomb, we could get blown over and we could go over the side of the wadi and fall down. And so, you know, it's just sand track in front of you, effectively. So I was like, right, well, we'll just go straight down the middle. Happy days. I told my driver, right, slow right down to a crawl. I just want to brief the guy. So I sort of knelt down and started chatting to the guys and basically said, look, you know, make sure you're taking water on. We're not far from Fort Edinburgh. We got a couple more VPs to go through, and we're in, and we'll have a good break. You know, change your batteries in your valens, your metal detectors, and all of a sudden, just this huge explosion. It's impossible to describe, because, like, you know, when you're on the ranges, I'm sure you've done DEMS before, you know, and
yeah.
when you see an explosion from a distance, even if you're quite close to it, it's different than when you're inside that explosion, you know, when it's all around you. And, you know, my instant sort of reaction was, you know, and I reflect on this quite a lot when I think back to, you know, friends that I've lost. I think, well, my reaction was what they had, but then I woke up from mine. You know, that moment of realization, you know, and it is one word, you just go, fuck, you know what I mean? And that's it, lights out. So everything just, in that instant, that huge, like, incredible, violent, like, explosion that just erupts around you, you know, that you've got that shockwave is traveling through your body in that split second, and that moment of realization, and then black. And then when you open your eyes, then, if you're lucky enough to open your eyes, you know, it's, your senses are all dulled down, so your ears are ringing, and it's not sort of like what people think. It's like a high-pitched sort of squeal in your ears as they're trying to recover from the trauma of that sort of blast. So you can't hear anything. You know, like the dust in Afghanistan is like a real fine powder. So, you know, when there's an explosion, it causes this massive cloud. So the inside of the vehicle was filled in this dust. It was in your nose, it's in your lungs, you're coughing it up. You know, it's in your mouth. So you've got this veil pulled down over you, so you can't hear and you can't see. You know, I remember the first real sensations that I had were of pain and the taste of blood. So I'd bitten through a piece of my tongue, so I was bleeding in my mouth, and you know, I could feel a bit of pain in my body. I can really at that point locate where it was, but you know, slowly but surely, like, the dust started to settle and the ringing in my ears eased off, you know, and then I can remember, like, the next thing was a little bit of sound coming back to me, and I could hear, like, screaming and crying, you know, and even now, all these years later, it's still something that wakes me up in the middle of the night. You know, I still think about that. I still can't be around people when they're screaming, even in excitement. You know what I mean? Like, the only environment is sort of when I'm coaching, because for some reason I can focus so much on my job, on my role, it just doesn't impact me. But I can't. My eldest son, Yestin, when I came back, like, he was only a little baby, and whenever he would scream, I would literally crawl off the sofa and go and hide in the cellar, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
But that's how much of an impact that moment had on me. And as that dust sort of settled, I got to see, you know, like the carnage inside the vehicle, and, you know, the radio had been ripped off its mount, and, you know, there was kit everywhere. The floor had been blown up. You know, 2 of my boys were injured, and I don't really want to talk about their injuries.
That's fine.
But, you know, like the back of a Mastiff, even though it's a big vehicle, it's a very, very confined space. The vehicle itself, there's two rear axles on a Mastiff, so the front of the two rear axles are blown sideways, so the wheels were like sort of sat off to the side, and the second of the rear axles, the back one, are blown backwards. So we were sat in a bit of a crater, and the rear axle was actually blocking the back doors. So my first sort of action, you know, once I saw what was going on, was to try and get the back doors open, but we couldn't get the back doors open. So instead, the only way to really get casualties out is to either go through like sort of where I would sit as a commander, or the escape hatches, which were right above where my two soldiers were. So you imagine in an instant, the floor had gone from where it is now to about knee height, you know, so there's a lot of crush injuries and, you know, a lot of damage to lower limbs. And, you know, I'd taken a bit of a bump on the head, and I wasn't really overly concerned about that. You know, first priority for me was to like get out of the top of the vehicle, because I can't use my radio at the moment, you know, and communicate with my sergeant major who's in the vehicle behind me. So luckily my driver up front, he was scot-free, didn't have any injuries, and, you know, he's a trained medic. So I said, look, mate, you get stuck in on these guys. I need to go up top. So I managed to get my PRR, you know, small radio, connect that, popped a smoke grenade over the side to let people know that there were no fatalities.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And basically start the conversation, because you've got to get the comms going as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
You know, I'd missed the opportunity to report that, you know, we'd had contact IED, because obviously my radio was damaged at that point. So I had to relay things through my sergeant major, and, you know, like I knew as soon as I'd let him know that there were no fatalities, you know, a bit of a weight come off him. But the problem you have then is, yeah, it's quite a wide area, and like I said, you don't want to go to the west, you don't want to go to the east, but, you know, our troop had to clear a track up towards us. And normally where there's one IED placed, there's a number of IEDs. You know, they'll put one that's set for a vehicle, and then they'll have others that might be set for personnel, those guys that have got to clear, so they've got to take their time. And I can just remember it feeling like an age, you know, climbing up onto the top of the vehicle, having a bit of a chat and saying, oh, look, you know, how you getting on? Yeah. Going back down into the vehicle, and my other two guys, they couldn't really move. You know what I mean? Having to relate to them, you know, what's going on, you know, and try and reassure them, you know. But also I was in shock. You know, I was, you know, like I was in pain, but again, like I said, I wasn't sure where I was in pain. I'd taken quite a bump on the head. You know, I was spitting out some blood. I was just trying to keep myself focused. So I can remember just going through periods of like reassuring, grabbing water for them, keep drinking water. I remember having to climb up on the top and get the bottles from that we used to store between the bar armor, you know, to just keep hydrated, because it was just so warm and so confined. And, you know, you'd have a lot of like screaming, and then things would go quiet. And, you know, our medic, my driver was really, really busy, and fair play to him. He did an amazing job, you know, and he just focused on the casualties. Eventually, the troop were able to get a vehicle up next to us, so they got like a flatbed vehicle, and it was a case of, right, let's start to extract the two primary casualties. So I can remember the guys getting on and getting my boys up and out of the escape hatches, onto the back decks, onto stretchers, and then moving them and cross-decking them onto the back of, I think it was a Foden or something like that, so then they could extract them back. And I took a little moment, you know, after the back of the vehicle was clear and my boys were out. I just remember just sitting there, and I was just, it was like a bit of a mixture of, you know, rage, pure rage at what had happened, disbelief that it had happened, and then those initial seeds of guilt. You know, what did I do wrong? How didn't I see it? You know, and once those sort of seeds of guilt, they get their claws into you, they never ever let go. It doesn't matter what treatment you have. I mean, I've been in the care of mental health professionals for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And I still get days where I just cannot get off that thought process of, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? Why didn't I see that? I should have known better. I've got my guys injured, you know, and it is very much a case of, you know, like when people explained it to me, I understand it wasn't me. I didn't plant the bomb, you know what I mean? But I always try and say, well, you imagine if you've got kids and you put them in the car and you click them into their car seats and you go into the swimming pool and you're driving down the road and a drunk driver hits your car and your kids get injured. You know, that guilt that you feel because of them suffering that injury, that's the same as what I feel, you know, because like I said, you know, I was very proud of being a commander and, you know, I expected a lot of my guys, but also, you know what I mean, I was hugely invested in them, you know, and the one thing that you always try and do is make sure you bring your guys back intact, and, you know, and they come before you. As a you know, any good commander knows that your focus is purely on your troops and getting them through, you know, and I felt like I'd broken that sort of unspoken contract. My boys got moved sort of back, and my sergeant major had set up a HLS and there was a clear area, and I literally limped off the back of my vehicle, walked through. I don't even know if the area where I walked was clear. I was so angry and so despondent. Got to the back of my sergeant major's vehicle, threw my helmet into the desert, sat down with a bottle of water, and I just couldn't get off the narrative of I didn't see it, I don't understand, and like, you know, so, you know, I was obviously struggling with you know, with shock at that point, and my focus had gone into the boys, and, you know, they'd had morphine. I hadn't had any morphine or anything, you know, I didn't really thought about that. You know, so next steps were, right, well, what's going to happen now? I don't know. I think I twisted my ankle. I'd taken a bump on the head, but I'm all right. Like, I was just filled with adrenaline and anger and, you know, these seeds of guilt. And HLS is all set up. 2 boys come over on the stretcher, and I can remember going over, and a moment that really always stands out for me is 2 of the young lance corporals in my troop who I'd helped sort of mould. You know, one of them is now a squadron sergeant major of my squadron, C squadron. I think it is amazing.
Yeah.
But I can remember like handing over my pistol and my magazines and my maps and my commander's folders, you know, and it was almost like I just passed it all on to them, you know, and said, right, you've got this now, you know, and they helped me onto the back of the Chinook. And I can remember being on the Mert, and, you know, both of my boys are like strapped down, and they got teams working on them, and they're writhing in pain. And I'm sort of sat there, and I've got a medic talking to me, and I'm not really listening. You know, I just can't really take my eyes off them. So I was sat as I am now, and the back of the Chinook is over to my right. You know, so you've got the door, you've got the back, you can look out, and over to the left, that's where the boys were getting worked on. And quite often when I sort of zone out, I always look off to my left. So I subconsciously am still looking at my soldiers that are injured and pulling all of that responsibility in. And I just can't stop doing that. So the medic started chatting away to me and finally managed to snap me out of it a bit, you know, and, you know, asked me if I'd had any morphine. I said no. He said, right, let's give you some morphine, you know, and I was like, well, I don't know, I'm all right. I'm all right. Can you just give me updates on my guys? So we got back to Camp Bastion, and, you know, I was still quite clear of mind. My whole focus was on them. I couldn't take my eyes off them, and they took us in. Absolutely amazing, you know, and I can remember laying there with the lights on me, and they kept the boys really, really close to me, and everyone's getting worked on, and I'm like asking how they are and this, that, and the other. And, you know, like they took my boot off, and as they took my boot off, I just got this incredible amount of pain that just sort of shot up through my body, and I was like hanging off the ceiling, and they were like, whoa, hang on a minute, right, don't take his boot off, let's give him some drugs. So they pumped me full of ketamine, and that was pretty much me then. You know, I completely zoned out. You know, I was totally pain-free, you know, but I didn't really have a care in the world then, you know, and they took my boot off and done whatever work they needed to do on my leg, you know, and the next thing I know, we're on a ward, getting given ridiculous amounts of morphine, you know, and half of our squadron had gone back down to Camp Bastion. So we had quite a lot of our own troops there, you know, and they'd come in to visit us. And I can remember, like, before we'd even got to the ward, I can remember seeing my OC, you know what I mean? You know, and saying, look, I didn't see it. That was I couldn't get off this narrative about it.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just sort of fixated. How could I have seen it? Because I was crouched down and I was talking to my guys, and we were rolling at like 3-5 miles an hour, not even that, you know, in an area where there was no VP, you know, there was no vulnerable point. So, you know, I understand that. But anyway, we got on the ward, and, you know, typical thing, boys all turned up with bags full of shopping and stuff. You know, my one of my team had had really bad injury to his one leg, and he got given Runner's World magazine, which I just thought was just classic, you know, army humor.
Yeah.
You know, and I can remember just laughing and having a laugh and trying to be light about things. But again, we were on so much morphine. We'd be like taking it in turns and vomiting, because they do really push your body to the limit of how much morphine you can take. Their whole mandate is to keep you as pain-free as possible, if they can keep you pain-free.
Okay.
You know, so the next sort of 24 hours is a bit of a fugue, a bit of a mishmash of just being completely dulled down on painkillers and getting on a helicopter and, you know, flying to Kandahar, and then, you know, getting onto, I distinctly remember being carried onto the back of the hospital Herc, you know, and that was an eye-opener as well, because, you know, like I said, you only see your worldview, but then when you're on the back of that Hercules and you've got guys that are getting taken to like the high dependency part, you know, where they deal with the serious casualties, and then you've got walking wounded that are clipped in seats down the side, and they bring you in on a stretcher, and they've got like it's almost like a metal rack that runs down the middle, and they just clip you in.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like bunk beds.
Oh, wow.
So you just get clipped in, boom, 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 all the way down. And then you've got nurses that are looking after you and topping up your morphine, you know, so I don't even recall most of the flight. I was just, it was a real shocker for me. And, you know, we landed in Birmingham, and there was like a horseshoe or semicircle of ambulances there. And one at a time, they bring us down, put us in the back, blue light us back to, you know, to the hospital, you know, and then, like, for me, the big shocker then was like, well, I've had all my uniform cut off me. You know, I'm wearing, I don't even know what, and I'm not in Afghanistan. I was just out on operations, you know, at the absolute pinnacle of everything I built towards, you know, since I joined the army, and now all of a sudden I'm laying in a hospital bed, and, you know, I know my leg was hurt. They told me that I had a little break in my leg. I didn't know, you know, what the deal was. I didn't know how bad it was until further down the line. You know, like I said, I was more concerned about my team and their recovery. And you rock up on a ward, and you've got a young Royal Marine lad there with his leg missing and a drain sticking out of it, and then you've got another amputee in a bed next to you, who's somebody you'd actually been part of the casualty evacuation for, and you see all these people, and it just overwhelms your senses.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to adjust, you know, to that. So, you know, it was tough. And, you know, like I went back to Germany. I sort of lied through my teeth to get out of that hospital as quickly as possible to get back to my family.
Okay.
And I definitely left way too early, you know, and I really, really struggled.
How long was you there for then?
What, in the hospital?
In the hospital, yeah. Before
I can't remember. I was on so much drugs.
Yeah, that's another blur as well.
Yeah, exactly. And all I remember, once I knew those boys were in the best care they could have, was just to get back to my family, because my son Yestin, he'd had a collapsed lung. That had happened the day before I went out on patrol.
Right.
So my wife was in the hospital. She was actually coming back from the hospital, and this is a true story. Like when I was in Camp Bastion, they wheeled my bed over to the phone, and they said, "Look, Dad, we've got people there on standby, but we don't really want to send someone in uniform to the door of your wife when everyone's deployed on operations. So it'd be much better if you could give her a call, and then once you've spoken to her, then they can come through, because then she's not going to have this shock and this fear of, you know, what's happened." So it was the most unimaginable phone call that we've ever had, you know, and I'm there on like ridiculously, you know, high amounts of painkillers, and I'm like, "Hey, how are you? How's Yestin doing?" She's like, "Oh, why are you calling me? I didn't think you were going to call me for a little while." And I was like, "Oh yeah, a bit of a thing. Got a bit blown up." "Oh, okay." I was like, don't worry, it's not bad, but I'm going to be going back to the UK and I'll be in hospital. So, you know, fast forward to me being back in Birmingham, my family couldn't come and visit me because obviously my wife had to look after my, you know, quite ill son who was, you know, just recovering from this collapsed lung. So I was sort of stuck there. I had some visits from my family and things, but I wanted to get back to my family, my close family, what I cared about. And, you know, it was a real tough time over those couple of months where I was, you know, trying to rehabilitate and, you know, assess where my injuries were at. All I wanted to do was just get back out. You know, it'd gone from, I think I've got a sprained ankle, I'll be back out in a couple of weeks, to, or maybe I'll be back before the end of the tour, I've got a fracture, to turning out they're saying, all right, well, actually, you know, you've got damage to your heel, you know, your nerves are all damaged in your heel, the blast has travelled up through your ankle and gone, you know, up into your tib and fib and caused damage there. And I just, you know, I didn't respond well. You know, I tried to stay focused, but then like sort of PTSD started rearing its head, and you know, I was dealing with the early sort of issues around a mild traumatic brain injury that I'd suffered as well.
Okay.
So I had my physical injury, you know, of my leg that I was sort of trying to manage and make you know, become fixed, you know, forcing it by sheer force of will. But then I was combating, you know, all these issues I was having with the brain injury. I was getting short and long-term memory loss and couldn't remember people, and, you know, couldn't count, couldn't read, because I just fall asleep, you know. So I was trying to deal with all that. And then there was how I would react to screaming, and, you know, how I just become really, really weird around cleanliness and things. Like, you know, I got like OCD. You know, my wife came back the one day and I'd stripped the front off the dishwasher because I'd been in my wheelchair and I saw a little bit of dirt around the button, and I disconnected everything and pulled all the front, I had it all in pieces in the kitchen.
Really?
You know, and so I had to go through the whole process of, it was like I was getting attacked on 3 different fronts. You know, and to be honest, you know, when I look back at it, the absolute worst one was mental health, was around PTSD.
Okay.
You know, because first off, I was fighting against it because I was just like, no, I've got all this experience. I've been a soldier since 1997 and I've done this operational tour and that. And, you know, the bravado in me, the person that doesn't understand, was like, no, I'm not. That's somebody who's weak. I'm not weak. I have come through all of this adversity and I've done this, and no, I couldn't accept it. And I can remember sitting down. It was quite a pivotal moment for me when I got diagnosed. And I was sat opposite this officer who was a psychiatrist or something, you know, and he said, "Look, you've got PTSD," and I thought, but I don't, do I? I can't have because of X, Y, Z. And he said, "Look, you've got commander's guilt." He said, "I see it all the time. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't about you. This is about them and what they've suffered. You don't care about yourself, you know, and you've just pulled this guilt about, you know, troops under your command, and you won't let it go." And I probably still haven't, you know, and you know, it's a tough old thing going and dealing with mental health over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that ever really changes is the mental health professional that you sat opposite, you know, and the first thing they ever say to you when you get passed on, you leave the military, whatever, is, right, tell me from the beginning.
Yeah.
So you got to relive the whole thing again and go through it. And I've tried every type of treatment, and, you know, my leg, I've had problems with my leg and stuff like that, but I still get out and run and everything. But the mental health thing, you know, that's something that just
that's
never
tricky.
ever goes away, mate, you know.
So thank you for sharing all that. That's a very detailed description of what happened. So thanks so much for sharing.
No, it's okay.
But not everybody's going to be watching this. Some people are just going to be listening. So this was your left leg, heel that got the shock or the brunt of the explosion. When you said you had the bump on the head, that led to the brain injury.
Yeah.
Or what's the
mild traumatic brain injury?
And what's the acronym of that?
mTBI.
mTBI. And then also the PTSD that you just mentioned. So, as you say, 3 areas that you're dealing with. So, I'm guessing you had to deal with your ankle first. Is that right?
It was,
or was it kind of a all-together type thing?
All together.
It was it?
Yeah. I mean, like the whole thing with my leg, that was almost something I could have an influence on. So,
Okay.
and you know, and it's part of the story of how we met.
Yeah.
You know, I was Headley caught, you know, trying to rehabilitate this ankle, and I'd gone through a 5-year block where I'd had operation after operation, and I just kept getting problem after problem after problem with it, and it, you know, pain, and I get something called osteophytes, which is like a bony growth on the front, which would restrict my range of movement. And then my ankle had started to fill with scar tissue. So damage to my Achilles as well, damage to my heel. I couldn't walk barefoot because of the pain. So I done, you know, like my regiment, they've been amazing. You know, they were, right, let's get you special boots made where there's like a bit of a rocker built in the inside, and, you know, we'll get you going. And I was like, all right, we can adapt this. And, you know, my regiment, again, were going away to Afghanistan, and I got myself to a level of fitness where I was like, I was in really, really good shape. Mentally, I was in the worst I'd ever been in my life. You know,
Okay.
I'd pushed my family away. You know, they'd moved back to the UK. I was living on my own in camp, and I'd be waking up in the middle of the night, you know, screaming. You know, I had the keys to the gym. So I would go into the gym and I'd train. You know what I mean? I'd be hitting a punch bag and being sick and having a cry and clearing it up like early up. And that was just my life. And I was like, my focus wasn't how do I fix my family. My focus was, if I get back to Afghanistan, everything will be all right. I'll be a soldier again, and then everything will fall back into place. And I just pushed everything away from me, and that was my singular focus. So that I had this email come through from Help for Heroes, and they said, oh, look, we've had an injured soldier drop out for this trek to Everest Base Camp. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, sure. Now, for me, it wasn't about meeting new people or experiencing something different. I just saw it as a challenge. I thought to myself, if I can complete that and come back and my ankle's good, then that means then that I'm robust enough. And I went and spoke to my colonel, and he said, look, Corporal C, if you can get back in one piece from that, we'll deploy you straight away. Don't worry about that. And I was like, yes.
What year was that?
Oh, I can't.
Can you remember?
I can't remember.
No. Okay.
So I went out there, did the trek. You know, the real big impact for me was it gave me a bit of time. It was my first real experience in mindfulness. You know, I always thought it was something quite flowery, you know, like go and do some painting or pottery, or I don't know, something really, really fluffy.
Okay.
But like actually being out in Nepal and hiking for hours in this incredible scenery, you know, not necessarily talking to anyone, but it gives you a lot of opportunity to really focus on that one task. And I quite quickly was able to put the pieces of my life back together. I can remember on the way back from Everest Base Camp, I just went, I've pushed my family away. It's not their fault. I love them. I need them. You know, and I can remember emailing my wife and saying, like, I'm really sorry that I'm not right. And it's not you. It's all me. And I'll seek help. Can we please, you know, get together and have a chat? And, you know, so that was a huge moment in me bouncing back from the absolute gutter of my life so far, you know, where I was, like I said, I was incredibly fit, but mentally I was done, you know. And the little kicker off the back of that was on the way back from Everest Base Camp, my ankle started playing up again.
Okay.
So I went back and I had an assessment, and they were like, look, yeah, you've got this osteophyte and we need to do some work on your ankle. And I went in for surgery, and I woke up in agony. Like from the moment, you know, like in the recovery room, you normally still got like a lot of painkillers in your system, you know. No, I was in so much pain. And I went through a whole period there where like my life had completely switched. My mental health started improving because I was back with my family and the people that I loved, and I got my appreciation for that back. But my mental health, my physical health had deteriorated, where I was like living on morphine, you know, and all these other painkillers. So the first thing I would do when I would wake up is I would reach for the morphine, and I was going back to Headley Court and not getting any better and not being able to sleep properly. I just developed all these sort of little tics and twitches because my nervous system was all over the place from the pain, you know. And it was while I was there, that environment is incredible. I saw other soldiers that were further down the line, amputees, running around, enjoying themselves in pain, but compared to the pain I was in, very little, and saying, oh, you know, this is the way forward and stuff. And, you know, I thought, well, right, this is what I need to obviously do, you know. And most people think it's horrific to opt to have part of your body cut off. And, you know, for me, I was pushed into a corner. I can remember distinctly being in the house when we were living in Cardiff on a summer day and watching the kids playing outside in the garden, banging on the glass saying, "Daddy, Daddy, look at me, look at me." And I'm there soaked in sweat from all the morphine in my system, just thinking, I'm not a husband. I'm not a father. I'm 100% not a soldier. So I don't know what I am. I've lost all my identity. I need to take some sort of control. So the physical thing for me was go back to Headley Court, you know, do my homework and present a case to them that they wouldn't be able to throw out. So I said, look, I need an amputation of my left leg because of this reasons. And I've done case studies and these people are like me and this is going to give me my life back. And they were like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Right, let's get some assessments done to make sure mentally you're in the right frame of mind and everything. And it was a bit of a whirlwind. Then off I went to London, went in, leg off, you know, and yeah, it was really hard, but it was the beginning of the new version of me.
Okay.
You know, and you know, and I sort of never looked back from there. You know, it really did give me my life back. And that's how I ended up sort of transitioning out of the military. You know, I was very involved with Help for Heroes and, you know, the whole sports recovery thing, you know, which sort of brings us on to like how we met.
Yeah. And so before we go on to that, below knee, where was the amputation done in regards to placement, I guess?
About mid-shin.
Mid-shin.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And what does that look like in regards to recovery from that? Was you still going back to Headley Court to get... I mean, their help there was incredible, right? So they helped you walk again. What does that look like?
Oh, Headley Court is the most incredible place ever. You know, I was on a lower limbs course, regularly going back to rehabilitate from my injuries before I had the amputation. But then after the amputation, I went into complex trauma, which is like, it's like a 5-star all-inclusive version of Headley Court. You know, it's incredible. I'd spent a lot of time at Headley Court and I knew what it was all about. But then when I got in with the complex trauma team, it was completely different. You know, it just accelerated everything. You know, every aspect of my day when I was at Headley Court was built around, you know, how can I get better and fitter and stronger and, you know, get a better fitting socket, you know, go through that process, like you said, of, you know, zipping around in a wheelchair and working on my fitness and, you know, making sure my scars healed up, to getting on a leg and being allowed to stand on a leg, you know, with crutches or in bars and then with sticks, you know, and then being allowed to take my leg home with me, which sounds weird, but like the typical nature of us as soldiers, we were always push things too far because we'd be frustrated or we always want to drive things as fast and as hard as we can, you know. So I can remember being told, right, there you go, there's your leg, you could take your leg home, only wear it for X amount of hours and blah, blah, blah. And we went for a walk way beyond what I was told to do, to go and see some waterfalls. And I had a big, massive blister on the end of my leg and wasn't able to put it back on. So I learned my lesson. Okay. You know, so again, we're always learning, you know, how do you manage your physical injuries? But also while I was at Headley Court, you know, I was, you know, receiving treatment for PTSD. They've got a mild traumatic brain injury team there as well, you know, which unpicked the whole thing for me and made me understand it and gave me strategies. So because I can't visualize numbers, I can visualize a pattern though.
Okay.
So if I need to remember and, you know, like a number, then I would visualize what the pattern would be, you know. So if it's a code or something like that for like a gate or a door, you know, I understand that. If I need to learn people's names, I know to associate what their names are with something I already know, a famous person or a team or whatever it might be, you know. So they gave me all these strategies, so I was able to manage that. And over the years, I still use these strategies now. But it was literally just the best rehabilitation environment I could ever have asked for.
Nice. And that allowed you to set new goals. And sports, is that coming into it? Is that what kept you going?
Yeah, I mean, like, I can remember not long after I'd been up and on my leg properly, you know, Battleback took us away skiing, you know, like, so I got away skiing and like I still wasn't walking great, you know, and I found it really painful on a prosthetic. But then like when you spend hours like skiing and twisting your leg all over the place, it built up the resilience. So off the back of coming back from the skiing, not only did I have this amazing trip, and was able to zoom around and do something I haven't done for a long time, but also all of a sudden, like, my leg was much better and I could walk on it better. And then I got into this frame of mind of like, right, just don't even think about it. Just go out and do, so I sort of pushed and pushed and pushed. And, it was, further down the line then where, I got sort of set my sights on Invictus, and I thought, you know what, I love sports rehabilitation, how you can use it as a vehicle, to improve your physical state, your mental state, achieve things. Whereas like pre-injury, you know what I mean? Like, you had all these achievements, be it promoting or being the best at something or doing something great, being on an operational tour. All of a sudden you've lost your identity, and now this is giving you a little bit back and you can focus in a different way. And, the whole road to Invictus, yes, I didn't complete that road, but I think for a good reason, starting off with the US Air Force trials and getting out there and getting on a bike and doing some discus and shot put, and thinking, do you know what, I got the hang of this, and, feeling what it's like to compete again as well. It just awakens a bit of a beast in you, because we're all competitive animals.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And but also being part of a team and in an environment, you know what I mean, and having that banter, the good banter again, because you know what it's like. When you're injured, the only time you're together with a group is when you're at like Headley Court. Once you've like done Headley Court and you've completed it, that's you. You're either on your way out of the military, or you're off on a posting somewhere, or you're in the process of leaving the military. You don't really have a connection with other veterans and serving soldiers that you've got that common bond with anyway, because you're all in the same boat because you've been injured. So the whole sports recovery thing was amazing. And, to go out the first time, and then to go out and take part in the Warrior Games in 2015, I think it was, wasn't it?
Oh, 2015 was the Nellis Air Force Base for the US Air Force trials. So I think it was 2016 for you with... was it the same year?
I'm sure it was.
That's right, yeah, because I had a surgery that year, so I didn't actually go out and compete. That's it, yeah, because I competed the following year in the Warrior Games. So you essentially went out to America twice in 2015 to compete in the Air Force trials and then the actual Warrior Games. Yeah. That's cool. So what was the Warrior Games like for you?
A totally different kettle of fish. Was way more humidity out there. But it was really transformative for me. And it sort of, we talk about sports recovery, and you almost think about it as quite a linear thing, right? I am a competitor in whatever sport I'm in, and this is going to take me to Invictus Games or, Paralympics, depending on what you do, or give me these life goals. But for me, it was completely different. So, like I'd been out there, and I was competing in discus, and there was this US Marines guy, quite tall guy. He had real problems with PTSD and stuff. And like I just hit a really good throw, and I was really pleased with it. And I'm at the back of the cage now, watching the other competitors, thinking, yeah, I reckon I got this now. And this guy went up, and big, massive guy, and he threw, and he, fouled his throw, and he had a bit of a meltdown and stuff, and his partner was trying to chill him out and stuff. And I went up to him and I was like, oh, look, mate, come on, you got this. Look, with these big, massive levers you got, you should be smashing this, and he was like, oh, I can't do it. And I said, look, just think about three things. So what I want you to do now is you're just going to pick a point in the distance, okay? And I want you to, when you go to throw, you go big chest. So really push your chest out and pull your arms back. And then the third thing then is when you bring that discus around, is just use your hand like a blade to chop the top off those trees. So just follow through, just focus on those three things and let everything else fall out of your mind. Anyway, like, he went up and hit his next throw, and he absolutely nailed it. You know what I mean? And he turned around with this big smile on his face. And, as far as I remember, like, I'm pretty sure I got silver and he got gold or something like that. So it was my experience of not coaching your competition. But like, it really had an impact on me. I got more enjoyment out of seeing him succeed than I had ever got in winning anything or competing in anything, because as you know, as a competitor, it's all about you. It's about you doing better every time in whatever discipline you're in. And I thought, well, that's not actually what makes me tick. I get more enjoyment out of seeing others succeed. So I got this Staff Sergeant Jacob Rich award, for camaraderie, which I had been nominated by all the other nations that were attending. So at the closing ceremony, I got called up on stage and given this award, which I was completely embarrassed about, but his family were there and, handed me this award. And it was because the teams had seen the impact I'd had on others by assisting. So on the flight on the way home, I just thought to myself, do you know what? I don't want to go to Invictus Games. I don't want to do any of that. I want to be a coach or a mentor or something where I can help others. And maybe that's where I can, find my real worth again. Because, my self-value was extremely low, like post-injury, it was always like, I always had this ghost of the pre-injured me, the soldier version of me, and what I am now. And I could never compare to that.
Okay.
So you're always fighting against that. And, in those little moments, I found that energy, that puff your chest out, that pride in achieving something, making a difference, putting a smile on someone's face, showing them that they can do. And that's sort of what led into coaching and where I'm at now.
Nice. We'll definitely come on to that very shortly. So you're flying back in 2015. At that point, are you still in the military or had you left by that point?
Bit hazy. I'm pretty sure I was still serving then.
You're still serving then?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And what year did you have the operation on your leg, the amputation?
I can't remember.
Because
I just remember when I got in. Yeah, you probably had to work it out. So I got injured in 2008.
Yeah.
And then I had the surgery basically 5 years after that. So I went through 5 years of trying to keep the leg.
Okay, so 2013.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. And then 2 years later, you're competing in the Warrior Games.
Yeah.
Pretty epic, 2 years after an amputation. So you come back, you feel like you can do more as a coach, as you say, a mentor. So what does that look like when you land back in the UK, moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it lit a bit of a fire in me. I thought to myself, well, I haven't felt like this in a long time. So, I told my wife and everything. I said, right, I'm done with sports recovery. It's helped me recovered. I think I found something cool that is going to, be something for me, but helping others, and so I went in and assisted at the local rugby club. So I was the parent on the sideline that was a bit overeager to help the coach. And, the coach would be struggling some days. I'm like, oh, don't worry, I'll help you with this. Or would you be interested in being a coach? I was like, oh, yeah, why not? You know what I mean? And, quite quickly I ended up in a course, my level 1 rugby coaching course in Risca. And I turned up on the course. And the guy that was overseeing the course, who's the coach development officer for the Dragons region, we got to chatting and everyone sat down and they'd done their introductions and everything. And they said, right, everybody get changed now. We're going to go do a warm up and then we're going to do some practicals. And I was like, okay. I said, I might be a couple of minutes because I got to take my tracksuit bottoms off, change my leg. And the guy just looked at me a bit strange and he was like, what are you on about? Change your leg? And I took my tracksuit bottoms off. Okay. And he was like, oh, change your leg. Okay. So he always reflects back on this and says, I always read the register now. So if anyone's on a course and somebody says that they've got a disability, I can see it's there. So, but this chap, Nigel, amazing bloke. His son was actually in my old infantry battalion. So right. we got to chatting. And he used to do a role for the Welsh Rugby Union, which was a disability officer. So when I completed the course, he said, look, Dad, you've done fantastic. You've obviously got a natural ability at coaching. Come down to the Disability Six Nations in Ystrad Mynach and come and check it out, see what you think. So I went down to this event and there was children there with disabilities of all ranges, just having a great time and playing our national sport. I love rugby, always played rugby, so seeing all the smiles on faces and everything, I was quite G'd up, a freshly minted coach. I was like, right, how can I get involved? Like, when's the next thing? And they were like, oh, well, no, this is it. There's just one event, and that's it. So me being me, I was like, well, what about this and what about that? And why don't you do this? And you should do that. X, Y, Z. So it quickly snowballed then into a situation where I'd wrote an email to the Welsh Rugby Union and, said, look, you should be doing this, this, and this, and it'd be amazing, and da, da, and they come back to me and said, well, if you think you can do it, you do it. So I said, all right, I will. So I sort of got taken on as a community coach, just casual working, but I put in so many hours that it was ridiculous, because it wasn't because I was pushing for a full-time role. It was because I loved what I was doing. My whole sort of thing was, I designed this disability schools program. So I would go into, say, 5 special schools, or schools that have SEN units, so children with disabilities within a unit in a mainstream school.
Right.
And over a series of 4 weeks, I would run sessions in those schools, building these children up slowly to a point where they could play the game. So teaching them all about rugby, and then on the 5th week, then we'd bring all these schools together and we'd have a big festival. So rugby festival, we do loads of skills in the morning, and then after that, then they'd all play against each other, and then they'd all be on their merry way. So you generate all this energy. So going into all these schools, and the one common theme was like, we wish we'd always had this, you know what I mean? And also this thing that sort of reared its head, and something now I've gone into, like, sort of educating coaches and developing my own courses, is like, there's this fear factor around working with people with disabilities, and it's totally unfounded. It's fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I've worked with coaches that have got huge amounts of experience, way more experience than me, but then you put them in an environment where they've got children with autism, and they just absolutely fold, because they can't cope with it. They don't understand it. So I said, all right, then we need to do some work around coach education here. How can we better improve this? And my role then sort of transitioned. I'd proven to the Welsh Rugby Union that there was a real appetite for this and a demand, and it's something that we should be doing. So they brought in a disability rugby strategy and gave me a full-time role to, like, sort of service that strategy and really bring it to life. So I just took the ball and just ran with it. And, we've developed to such a point now where, we're probably the sector leaders in inclusion in rugby, if not in quite a lot of sports.
That's cool.
We recently won an award, for In Sport Organisation of the Year, which, it's not about me and and what I've done. It's about the journey and how the organisation bought into it, and when I was first sort of looking at, transitioning from being this, like, sort of part-time, just working by the hour sort of coach, which I could afford to do because, well, I'm effectively a pensioner. I get my sergeant's wage, every month. It's money isn't really a concern. It was more about, like, finding where I could, make a difference. And, going into the role, it was all about that. It was about, I genuinely think I can make a difference, but I also think with a little bit of work, you can make the whole organisation realise that this isn't a nice to do sort of thing, or I love it, or working with kids with disabilities or adults with disabilities, but actually it's what we should do.
Yeah.
And to be really successful, any organisation should be reflective of their public, their participants, their customers, and in Wales, the Welsh Rugby Union, it's quite a big brand, and we need to be reflective of the Welsh society. So just because there's a child there that has Down syndrome, it doesn't mean that it doesn't love rugby and love watching rugby or playing rugby. So why not provide those opportunities? And in all fairness, like, the organisation was just like, yeah, let's just do it.
That's cool.
And if we're going to do it, let's do it properly.
Yeah.
And we did.
Great. Sounds like you're getting a lot from it as well.
I love it, mate. I absolutely love it.
That's so cool. That's cool to hear that you've helped develop something within the whole country of Wales, really. And yeah, like you say, changing the mindset and the thought process of certain things. So that's really, really cool. I just want to wind back a little bit. Do you remember the year that you did effectively leave the military? Because obviously there's like a transition there from military to civilian, and it sounds like that was quite good for you.
Yeah, I can't, like I said, because it's numbers.
That's fine.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but like, I quite often talk about transition, and for me, really, when I got into complex trauma at Headley Court. That was the beginning of my transition out of the army.
Okay.
So whereas like with a lot of guys, they'll transition out, they'll know they're leaving, and then a year later, they're basically out of the army.
Yeah.
So they're cramming with courses and getting in their gardening leave and all that sort of stuff. So it can be quite abrupt. For me, it was a lot more of a slow process. I'd effectively stopped being a soldier in 2008, the moment I was injured.
Right.
I just wouldn't let go. And then when I went and sat on the board and, the medical board, and they said, look, you can't be a soldier anymore.
Yeah.
That had just confirmed it for me, but I still couldn't accept it. But during my time at Headley Court and being around so many people where, like I wouldn't say I've ever been a selfish person. Like I said, I've always tried to think of others first. When you're in a place like Headley Court, you can't be a selfish person because there's always somebody there that's worse injured than you. So you never get the opportunity to I've been there when I've been doing like circuits and I've been hanging out, you know what I mean? And I've had one of the lads turn around to me, he was a double amputee, he's saying, come on, keep up. And you're just like, oh God, I can't show any weakness here. I need to keep going. So, it sort of makes your injuries sort of fall by the wayside and, makes you focus on what's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap it up for sure. This whole episode of yours. I've learnt so much, and listening to everything you've gone through has been a real good journey to go through with you. So thank you for that. Before we do wrap up, though, I would like you to maybe give some advice, some maybe experience that you want to share with somebody that's thinking of joining the military. You mentioned that your daughter's thinking of that, but there might be others out there that are considering. So what advice could you give to those?
Well, look, it's the same advice as what I gave my daughter. You know what I mean? Like you could look at me and almost, use me as an example of why you shouldn't join the army. But like the best years of my life currently, when I reflect back, are my days in the army. You know what I mean? Like to be able to get out of that goldfish bowl of home and expand your worldview, experience things that no one would ever believe. Go places and just it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And you'll have friends within the military your whole life. There'll always be someone there who will remember you and reminisce with you over something. I never thought that I'd get to the stage where I sit down and chat with my friends about times past, you know what I mean? But it rolls up on you quickly. And when you go to like reunions and stuff, you're part of a family, a brotherhood, which isn't gender related. It genuinely is, it's something that just joins you. You don't have to be injured or anything like that. Yeah, you maybe have a bit of a closer bond with those sort of people, but because you've got that shared experience, but you've got shared experience with so many. It's like we served in different parts of the army. Yeah, we've got a common bond and we're friends by default, because we understand each other. That's something that you don't really get from other jobs in life or roles or, that's something that even my daughter, when she joins the army, she will get to experience that herself, and for people that maybe leaving the army,
the veterans. Yeah. What advice have you got for them?
Yeah, well, we quite often undervalue ourselves, and again, I suppose it's the flip side of this, you spend so much of your time. I mean, you can serve like 22 years plus in the army, dependent on your career and where it takes you. And, like a lot of words get banded around, you become institutionalized. You don't know what it's like to live in the real world and, dealing with bills and not everything else. But again, you've got experience there, this sort of tacit knowledge that you can't learn in school, you can't learn in college, university, skills that you can bring to the table that will make you so valuable to your organization or, or even value to yourself. Once you identify, I pick myself, for example, now. My dream job was always to be a soldier. Ever since I was a kid, always wanted to be a soldier. Well, I'm effectively in my dream job again now because I'm helping people. I'm a completely different person, but the tools, the recipe for what I do now and it being successful is based all around the experience I had in the army and my understanding of people and, you know, my work ethic, my drive and determination, and my attention to detail, my ability around planning, you know, all of that transfers into projects and things like that. So, you know, I would just say never undersell yourself. You are worth so much more than that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's something that I wish I had heard
Yeah,
when I
me
left.
too.
When I left, but yeah, absolutely right. So great advice. Thanks so much. So I think we have come to the end. Is there anything that you thought about that you wanted to share that we haven't, or have we covered everything?
Oh, I feel like I've talked way too long.
No, it's been really good. And how was the experience for you to come on and share what you've shared?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's like sitting down with a friend and having a catch up. We haven't caught up in how many years now?
Yeah, 5-6 years now. Yeah,
exactly. So, you know, it's been a really nice experience. And again, if this is something that helps others, you know, then it's a value. You know what I mean? And I'm glad to share for that reason.
Great stuff, great stuff. Well, like I said earlier, thanks so much for sharing your experiences and the stories that you've got from your time in, and also for your time, because, you know, we don't have infinite amount of it. And so thank you for giving some of that today.
Oh, thank you.
And lastly, I did pre-warn you of this. I'm going to thank you for your service. So thanks for your service.
Oh, thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks very much. Thanks very much. This has been Military Veterans Podcast. Out.